Welcome to the Ghost N.E.A.R show, where we discuss and actively explore paranormal phenomena. I am your host, Keith Johnson, the co-founder of New England Anomalies Research. We are here at the Ladd Observatory in Providence, Rhode Island, honoring Edgar Allan Poe once again, who did spend some time in Providence, Rhode Island. And what did he do while he was here?
Edgar Allan Poe was here primarily to court the eccentric Providence poetess and heiress Sarah Helen Power Whitman, and they would actually tryst at Providence Athenaeum Library. So that is why he visited Providence, our fair city, where we are speaking from.
So with no further ado, let us commence with our tribute to Edgar Allan Poe.
Poe Man. This is by myself. While the air is chill, the land grown still, on the ground lies a pall of snow. Let us raise a toast to the wayward ghost of Edgar Allan Poe. As the city sleeps, there's a soul who weeps, and perhaps no one will know. If we gather around, you may hear the sound. It's Edgar Allan Poe. Nightmarish tales, madness assails, mysteries, malice prevailing. With his pen he wove an engrossing trove, tales of mystery and woe. In the darkening night, feel a thrill of fright from Edgar Allan Poe. Look beyond the veil when the moon is pale, to peer through the lamplight's glow. Find him pining there for a lady fair. He's Edgar Allan Poe. To Mr. Poe.
Thanks. Cheers.
And I have an ambition to recite this at the actual grave of Edgar Allan Poe outside Westminster Hall in Baltimore, Maryland. Maybe in January.
It was many and many a year ago, in a kingdom by the sea, that a maiden there lived who you might know by the name of Annabel Lee.
And this maiden she lived with no other thought than to love and be loved by me.
I was a child, and she was a child, in this kingdom by the sea. But we loved with a love which was more than love, I and my Annabel Lee.
With a love that the winged seraphs of heaven coveted her and me.
And this was the reason that long ago, in this kingdom by the sea, a wind blew out of a cloud, chilling my beautiful Annabel Lee, so that her high-born kinsman came and bore her away from me.
To shut her up in a sepulchre in this kingdom by the sea.
The angels, not half so happy in heaven, went envying her and me. Yes, that was the reason, as all we know in this kingdom by the sea.
That the wind came out of the cloud by night, chilling and killing my Annabel Lee.
But our love, it was stronger by far than the love of those who were older than we, of many far wiser than we, and neither the angels in heaven above, nor the demons down under the sea
can ever dissever my soul from the soul of the beautiful Annabel Lee.
For the moon never beams without bringing the dreams of the beautiful Annabel Lee, and the stars never rise, but I feel the bright eyes of the beautiful Annabel Lee. And so, all the night tide, I lie down by the side of my darling, my life, and my bride.
In my sepulchre there by the sea, in her tomb by the sounding sea. So dwelling, I could arrest here the descent of the steel. I forced myself to ponder upon the sound of the crescent as it should pass across the garment, upon the peculiar thrilling sensation which the friction of cloth produces on the nerves. I pondered upon all this frivolity until my teeth were on edge. Down, steadily down it crept, I took a frenzied pleasure in contrasting its downward with its lateral velocity, to the right, to the left, far and wide, with the shriek of a damned spirit, to my heart, with the stealthy pace of the tiger. I alternately laughed and howled as the one or the other grew predominant. Down, certainly relentlessly down. It vibrated within 3 inches of my bosom. I struggled violently, furiously, to free my left arm. This was free only from the elbow to the hand. I could reach the ladder from the platter beside me to my mouth with great effort, but no further. Could I have broken the fastenings above the elbow, I would have seized and attempted to arrest the pendulum. I might as well have attempted to arrest an avalanche. Down, still unceasingly, still inevitably down. I gasped and struggled at each vibration. I shrunk convulsively at its every sweep. My eyes followed its outward or upward whirls with the eagerness of the most unmeaning despair. They closed themselves spasmodically at the descent, although death would have been a relief. Oh, how unspeakable. Still I quivered in every nerve to think how slight a sinking of the machinery would precipitate that keen, glistening axe upon my bosom. It was hope that prompted the nerve to quiver, the frame to shrink. It was hope, the hope that triumphs on the rack, that whispers to the death-condemned, even in the dungeons of the Inquisition. I saw that some 10 or 12 vibrations would bring the steel in actual contact with my robe, and with this observation there suddenly came over my spirit all the keen, collected calmness of despair. For the first time during the many hours, or perhaps days, I thought. It now occurred to me that the bandage, or surcingle, which enveloped me, was unique. I was tied by no separate cord. The first stroke of the razor-like crescent athwart any position of the band would so detach it that it might be unwound from my person by means of my left hand. But how fearful in that case the proximity of the steel! The result of the slightest struggle, how deadly! Was it likely, moreover, that the minions of the torturer had not foreseen and provided for this possibility? Was it probable that the bandage crossed my bosom in the track of the pendulum? Dreading to find my feint, and as it seemed, my last hope frustrated, I so far elevated my head as to obtain a distinct view of my breast. The surcingle enveloped my limbs and body close in all directions, save in the path of the destroying crescent. Scarcely had I dropped my head back into its original position when there flashed upon my mind what I cannot better describe than as the unformed half of that idea of deliverance to which I had previously alluded, and of which a moiety only floated indeterminately through my brain when I raised food to my burning lips. The whole thought was now present, feeble, scarcely sane, scarcely definite, but still entire. I proceeded at once, with the nervous energy of despair, to attempt its execution. And he eventually works to free himself from the bandages, slowly. And it works. Plainly, I perceived the loosening of the bandage. I knew that in more than one place it must already be severed. With a more than human resolution, I lay still. Nor had I erred in my calculations, nor had I endured in vain. I at length felt that I was free. The surcingle hung in ribands from my body, but the stroke of the pendulum already pressed upon my bosom. It had divided the serge of the robe. It had cut through the linen beneath. Twice again it swung, and a sharp sense of pain shot through every nerve. But the moment of escape had arrived. At a wave of my hand, my deliverers hurried tumultuously away, who were the rats. With a steady movement, cautious, sidelong, shrinking, and slow, I slid from the embrace of the bandage and beyond the reach of the scimitar. For the moment, at least, I was free. Free, and in the grasp of the Inquisition. I had scarcely stepped from my wooden bed of horror upon the stone floor of the prison when the motion of the hellish machine ceased, and I beheld it drawn up by some invisible force through the ceiling. This was a lesson which I took desperately to heart. My every motion was undoubtedly watched. Free. I had but escaped death in one form of agony, to be delivered unto worse than death in some other. With that thought, I rolled my eyes nervously around on the barriers of iron that hemmed me in. Something unusual, some change for which at first I could not appreciate distinctly, it was obvious, had taken place in the apartment. For many minutes of a dreamy and trembling abstraction, I busied myself in vain, unconnected conjecture. During this period, I became aware, for the first time, of the origin of the sulphurous light which illumined the cell. It proceeded from a fissure about half an inch in width, extending entirely around the prison at the base of the walls, which thus appeared and were completely separated from the floor. I endeavored, but of course in vain, to look through the aperture. As I arose from the attempt, the mystery of the alteration in the chamber broke at once upon my understanding. I had observed that although the outlines of the figures upon the walls were sufficiently distinct, yet the colors seemed blurred and indefinite. These colors had now assumed, and were momentarily assuming, a startling and most intense brilliancy that gave to the spectral and fiendish portraitures an aspect that might have thrilled even firmer nerves than my own. Demon eyes of a wild and ghastly vivacity glared upon me in 1,000 directions where none had been visible before, and gleamed with the lurid luster of a fire that I could not force my imagination to regard as unreal. Unreal! Even while I breathed, there came to my nostrils the breath of the vapor of heated iron. A suffocating odor pervaded the prison. A deeper glow settled each moment in the eyes that glared at my agonies. A richer tint of crimson diffused itself over the pictured horrors of blood. I panted. I gasped for breath. There could be no doubt of the design of my tormentors. Oh, most unrelenting. Oh, most demoniac of men. I shrank from the glowing nettle to the center of the cell. Amid the thought of the fiery destruction that impended, the idea of the coolness of the well came over my soul like balm. I rushed to its deadly brink. I threw my straining vision below. The glare from the enkindled roof illumined its inmost recesses. Yet for a wild moment did my spirit refuse to comprehend the meaning of what I saw. At length it forced, it wrestled its way into my soul. It burned itself in upon my shuddering reason. Oh, for a voice to speak. Oh, horror. Oh, any horror but this. With a shriek, I rushed from the margin and buried my face in my hands, weeping bitterly. The heat rapidly increased, and once again I looked up, shuddering as with a fit of the ague. There had been a second change in the cell, and now the change was obviously in form. As before, it was in vain that I at first endeavored to appreciate or understand what was taking place. But not long was I left in doubt. The inquisitorial vengeance had been hurried by my twofold escape, and there was to be no more dallying with the King of Terrors. The room had been square. I saw that 2 of its iron angles were now acute, 2 consequently obtuse. The fearful difference quickly increased with a low rumbling or moaning sound. In an instant, the apartment had shifted its form into that of a lozenge. But the alteration stopped not here. I neither hoped nor desired it to stop. I could have clasped the red walls to my bosom as a garment of eternal peace. Death, I said, any death but that of the pit. Fool, might I not have known that into the pit it was the object of the burning iron to urge me? Could I resist its glow? Or even if that, could I withstand its pressure? And now, flatter and flatter grew the lozenge with a rapidity that left me no time for contemplation. Its center, and of course its greatest width, came just over the yawning gulf. I shrank back, but the closing walls pressed me resistlessly onward. At length, for my seared and writhing body, there was no longer an inch of foothold on the firm floor of the prison. I struggled no more, but the agony of my soul found vent in one long, loud, and final scream of despair. I felt that I tottered upon the brink. I averted my eyes. There was a discordant hum of human voices. There was a loud blast as of many trumpets. There was a harsh grating as of 1,000 thunders. The fiery walls rushed back. An outstretched arm caught my own as I fell, fainting, into the abyss. It was that of General Lasalle. The French army had entered Toledo. The Inquisition was in the hands of its enemies.
A careless rill was dreaming one fragrant summer night. It dreamed a star lay gleaming with heavenly looks of light, soft cradled on its own pure breast, that rose and fell and rocked to rest, with lulling wave its radiant guest in silent beauty beaming. And like a lute's low sighing, the rill sang to the star, "Why camest thou fondly flying from those blue hills afar? All calm and cold without thy ray, I slept the long dark night away. Ah, child of heaven, forever stay." No sweet voice rose requiring, "O glorious truant, listen, wilt fold thy shining wings, that softly glance and glisten, the while the wavelet sings? Wilt dwell with me? I'll give thee flowers, Our way shall be through balmy bowers, and song and dance shall charm the hours. My star love, dost thou listen? No gorgeous garden blossom in regal grace of you may pour upon my bosom its exquisite perfume, but I may wreath with wildflowers rare that softly breathe thy golden hair. The violet's tear shall tremble there, a fair though fragile blossom. Alas, when morning slowly stole over the distant hill, from that sweet dream so holy, it woke the sorrowing will. No child of heaven lay smiling there, 'twas but a vision white and rare, that blessed as passed the star in air, the rivulet lone and lowly.
Hear the sledges with the bells, silver bells. What a world of merriment their melody foretells. How they tinkle, tinkle, tinkle in the icy air of night. While the stars that oversprinkle all the heavens seem to twinkle with a crystalline delight. Keeping time, time, time in a sort of runic rhyme to the tintinnabulation that so musically swells from the bells, 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 and the jingling and the tinkling of the bells. Hear the mellow wedding bells, golden bells. What a world of happiness their harmony foretells. Through the balmy air of night, how they ring out their delight. From the molten golden notes and all in tune, what a liquid ditty floats to the turtle dove that listens while she gloats on the moon. Oh, from out the sounding cells, what a gush of euphony voluminously wells. How it swells, how it dwells on the future, how it tells of the rapture that impels to the swinging and the ringing of the bells, bells, bells. Of the bells, 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 to the rhyming and the chiming of the bells. Hear the loud alarm bells, brazen bells. What a tale of terror now their turbulency tells. In the startled air of night, how they scream out their affright. Too much horrified to speak, they can only shriek, shriek out of tune, to the clamorous appealing to the mercy of the fire, in a mad expostulation with the deaf and frantic fire, leaping higher, 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 with the desperate desire and a resolute endeavor, now, now, to sit or never by the side of the pale-faced moon. Oh, the bells, 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 what a tale their terror tells of despair, how they clang and crash and roar. What a horror they outpour on the bosom of the palpitating air. Yet the ear, it fully knows by the twanging and the clanging, how the danger ebbs and flows. Yet the air distinctly tells in the jangling and the wrangling how the danger sinks and swells by the sinking and the swelling and the anger of the bells, of the bells, of the bells, 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 in the clamor and the clangor of the bells. Hear the tolling of the bells, iron bells. What a world of solemn thought their monotony compels. In the silence of the night, how we shiver of affright at the melancholy menace of their tone, for every sound that floats from the rust within their throats is a groan. And the people, the people that there dwell up in the steeple, all alone, and who tolling, tolling, tolling in that muffled monotone, feel us glory so enrolling on the human heart a stone. They are neither man nor woman, they are neither brute nor human, they are ghouls. And their king it is who tolls as he rolls, 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 a paean from the bells, and his merry bosom swells in the pain of the bells, and he dances, and he yells, keeping time, time, time in a sort of runic rhyme to the pain of the bells, keeping time, time, time in a sort of runic rhyme to the throbbing of the bells, 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 of the sobbing of the bells, keeping time, time, time as he knells, knells, knells in a happy runic rhyme to the rolling of the bells, 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 to the tolling of the bells, 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 to the moaning and the groaning of the bells.
This poem has something of a Halloween reputation as something to do with horror, but really it's a poem about despair. From the moment the poem's narrator first hears the tapping at his chamber door, he's apprehensive and agitated. Upon entering the chamber, a raven sits upon the head of a bust of Pallas Athena, Greek goddess of wisdom and learning, which suggests to the narrator that the bird is prophetic. Poe makes it clear that the narrator is well aware the bird can only speak the word nevermore. yet with his questioning he drives himself into a frenzy of despair. It's comparable to trying to obtain favorable response from a magic 8-ball or a Ouija board. At the time Poe wrote this verse, his wife, Virginia Plum Poe, was succumbing to tuberculosis. It's probable her steady decline and imminent death was a major influence on its writing. Poe originally considered portraying the intrusive bird as a parrot, but rethinking that the only word which effectively can be rhymed with parrot is carrot, and parrots, not nocturnal birds, typically have bright plumage, Poe rethought this and instead cast the traditional bird of ill omen, the raven. And with that, I give you Carl Johnson and the Raven. Accompanied by Mr. Tom D'Agostino on the lute.
Now I'd like the weather to cooperate. It's been muggy and sunny so far. Let's see if we can get a little breeze and storm. Not as sunny as it was. Once upon a midnight dreary, while I pondered, weak and weary, over many a quaint and curious volume of forgotten lore, while I nodded, nearly napping, suddenly there came a tapping, as of someone gently rapping at my chamber door. "'Tis some visitor," I muttered, tapping at my chamber door. Only this and nothing more. Ah, distinctly I remember. It was in the bleak December, and each separate dying ember wrought its ghost upon the floor. Eagerly I wished the morrow. Vainly I had sought to borrow from my books surcease of sorrow, sorrow for the lost Lenore, for the rare and radiant maiden whom the angels name Lenore, nameless here forevermore. And the silken, sad, uncertain rustling of each purple curtain thrilled me, filled me with fantastic terrors never felt before. So that now, to still the beating of my heart, I stood repeating, "'Tis some visitor entreating entrance at my chamber door. Some late visitor entreating entrance at my chamber door. This it is and nothing more." Presently my soul grew stronger, hesitating then no longer. "Sir," said I, "or madam, truly your forgiveness I implore. But the fact is I was napping, and so gently you came rapping, and so faintly you came tapping at my chamber door, that I scarce was sure I heard you." Here I opened wide the door. Darkness there, and nothing more. Deep into that darkness peering, long I stood there, wondering, fearing, doubting, dreaming dreams no mortal ever dared to dream before. But the silence was unbroken, and the stillness gave no token, and the only word there spoken was the whispered word, "Lenore?" This I whispered, and an echo murmured back the word, "Lenore, Lenore." Merely this, and nothing more. Back into the chamber turning, all my soul within me burning, soon again I heard a tapping, somewhat louder than before. "Surely," said I, "surely that is something at my window lattice. Let me see then what thereat is, and this mystery explore. Let my heart be still a moment, and this mystery explore. 'Tis the wind and nothing more." Open here I flung the shutter, when with many a flirt and flutter, in there stepped the stately raven of the saintly days of yore. Not the least obeisance made he, not a minute stopped or stayed he, but with mien of lord or lady, perched above my chamber door, perched upon the bust of Pallas, just above my chamber door, perched and sat and nothing more. Then this ebony bird beguiling my sad fancy into smiling, by the grave and stern decorum of the countenance it wore. "Though thy crest be short and shaven, thou," I said, "art sure no craven, ghastly, grim, and ancient raven, wandering on the nightly shore. Tell me what thy lordly name is, on the night's Plutonian shore." Quoth the raven, "Nevermore." Much I marveled this ungainly fowl to hear discourse so plainly,
what though its answer little meaning, little relevancy bore? For we cannot help agreeing that no living human being ever yet was blessed with seeing bird above his chamber door. Bird or beast upon the sculpted bust above his chamber door with such name as Nevermore. But the raven sitting lonely on the placid bust spoke only that one word, as if his soul in that one word he did outpour. Nothing farther than he uttered, not a feather than he fluttered, till I scarcely more than muttered, other friends have flown before. On the morrow he will leave me, as my hopes have flown before. Then the bird said, Nevermore. Startled at the stillness broken by a reply so aptly spoken, doubtless, said I, what it utters, it's its only stock and store, caught from some unhappy master, whom unmerciful disaster followed fast and followed faster, till his songs one burden bore, till the dirges of his hope that melancholy burden bore of nevermore. But the raven still beguiling my sad fancy into smiling, straight I wheeled a cushioned seat in front of bird and bust and door. Then upon the velvet sinking, I betook myself to linking fancy unto fancy, thinking what this ominous bird of yore, what this grim, ungainly, ghastly, gaunt, and ominous bird of yore meant in croaking, nevermore. This I sat engaged in guessing, but no syllable expressing, to the fowler's fiery eyes thou burned into my bosom core. This and more I sat divining, with my head at ease reclining, on the cushion's velvet lining, that the lamplight floated o'er. But whose velvet violet lining, with the lamplight floating o'er, she shall press on nevermore. Then methought the inherent gesture, perfume from an unseen censer, run by seraphim, whose footfalls tinkled on the tufted floor. Wretch, I cried, thy God hath lent thee, by these angels he hath sent thee, respite and nepenthe from thy memories of Lenore. Quaff this kind nepenthe, and forget this lost Lenore. Quoth the raven, nevermore. Prophet, said I, thing of evil, prophet still of bird or devil, whether tempter sent, or whether tempest tossed thee here ashore, desolate yet all undaunted, on this desert land enchanted, on this home by horror haunted, tell me truly, I implore, is there balm in Gilead? Tell me, I implore. Quoth the raven, nevermore. Prophet, said I, thing of evil, prophet still, if bird or devil, by that heaven that bends above us, by that God we both adore, tell this soul with sorrow laden, if within the distant Aiden it shall clasp a sainted maiden whom the angels name Lenore, clasp a rare and radiant maiden whom the angels name Lenore. Quoth the raven, nevermore. Be that word our sign of parting, bird or fiend, I shrieked upstarting, get thee back into the tempest and the night's Plutonian shore. Leave no black plume as a token of that lie thy soul hath spoken. Leave my loneliness unbroken, quit the bust above my door. Take thy beak from out my heart, and take thy form from off my door. Quoth the raven, nevermore. And the raven, never flitting, still is sitting, on the pallid bust of Pallas just above my chamber door. And his eyes have all the seeming of a demon's that is dreaming, and the lamplight o'er him streaming throws his shadow on the floor. And my soul from out that shadow that lies floating on the floor shall be lifted nevermore.